All right. Welcome, DoorGrow hackers, to the DoorGrow Show. If you are a property management entrepreneur that wants to add doors, make a difference, increase revenue, help others, impact lives, and you are interested in growing your business and life, and you're open to doing things a bit differently, then you are a DoorGrow hacker. DoorGrow hackers love the opportunities, daily variety, unique challenges, and freedom that property management brings. Many in real estate think you're crazy for doing it. You think they're crazy for not, because you realize that property management is the ultimate high trust gateway to real estate deals, relationships, and residual income. At DoorGrow, we are on a mission to transform property management businesses and their owners. We want to transform the industry, eliminate the BS, build awareness, change perception, expand the market, and help the best property management entrepreneurs win. I'm your host, property management growth expert Jason Hull, the founder and CEO of DoorGrow. Now, let's get into the show. And today's guest, we have Vitaliy Merkulov. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did.
All right, I did it. Awesome. So Vitaliy is here from Renter Inc., and he has a rental verification software. But before we get into that, and we're going to be talking today about giving landlord references or providing rental verification, and so and how to automate this, right? And so before we get into that, though, Vitaliy, could you tell the listeners how software situation and doing this technology stuff, like give us a little bit of background on you so we understand how this all started?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really happy to be here. Definitely listen to a lot of your podcast, and you're awesome for doing this. So with that said, I have a lot of background in tech. So I used to work for Apple, Intel, Sharp, and some of the other companies. I have about 10 years experience doing that. So while I was working and doing that, some of my friends were starting investing into real estate, basically single family homes, duplexes, some even invested in apartment complexes. And they were saying like, hey, this was about 2012 where prices were good. So I ended up buying a duplex for myself. And then basically I didn't know anything about screening tenants or anything about property management. I was just trying it out. And I ended up accepting a tenant that I thought I did a good job screening. I called the previous landlord. I ran their credit, even, did their employment verification. Everything seemed to be really good. But what happened is afterwards, on the second month that I came to collect rent, they simply said, hey, by the way, we know the system, we're not going to leave and we're not going to pay you anything. So what happened is they basically faked their rental verification. They knew the system, and they actually asked their friend to act as a landlord. And knowing how that all works, you probably are aware of how that works. So I basically, actually here in California, it took me 3 months to get them out, eventually evicted them. But out of anger for me, they flooded the first floor. So I had to change all the floors and everything. And so it cost me about 11 grand just because of these tenants. So I try to figure out, okay, well, what did I do wrong? And then try to figure out, okay, why is there a way for people like me to get in this situation? So I started looking around, and I figured out that we need some kind of place for all these tenants, bad tenants, to be reported to. But it basically went on and on and on, and I realized I need to fill that gap with my tech knowledge. And honestly, now that I'm in it, I wish I knew how complex this whole system is. So with that said, I started building a kind of like a national database for bad tenants, and realized that that's illegal. And figured out, talked to a bunch of attorneys, and figured out a way to do it legally. And then what happened after is I realized there's no way to make this work unless there was, thousands and thousands of people on this database already. Yeah. So what we did is we decided, hey, instead of trying to build this database, which would be a good thing, we're going to figure out how we can offer great services to property managers, apartment complexes, and small landlords to give them some kind of service to help them. And also what's going to happen is we're going to start building that database while we're helping property managers. So with that, we talked to a lot of property managers and decided, hey, there's a lot of credit reports that are automated there. There's employment verification that's automated there, but there is no SaaS way of requesting or sharing rental verifications online. So that's what we're solving, basically, and we basically allow people to share rental verification through our system, which allows people to be compliant with HUD, and also he saves about 47% of the time to do it rather than faxing and emailing and calling. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea how we got here.
Yeah. So let's talk about the problem first, because businesses only exist if they can solve a problem, right? Mm-hmm. And so what's the problem that property managers might be dealing with, or that they deal with related to automating this? Mm-hmm. If they don't have this automated, what's sort of the issue that you typically find that they're dealing with?
Okay. So for one of the biggest issues is compliance. There's laws that change all the time, especially here in California, that restrict property managers and landlords to share certain information about them. And if a property manager does not keep up with it, then they can get into a lot of trouble, legal issues of sharing information that they were not able to share. So that is a big problem. And the way we solve it is we have a standard HUD compliant form that we share with everyone. And those are the only questions that landlords are able to share. So what that does is it prevents property managers from sharing information that they just can't or have a chance of being sued for.
Right. So that prevents them from asking anything that they shouldn't know, or they don't need to know, or shouldn't know, or be asking anyway.
Yeah. So it's more of providing it, not asking, but this is when somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want a rental verification on so-and-so. They lived at your property. Now they're applying at my apartment or my single family home. I want to get a reference from you. And if your assistant is not trained on fair housing compliant, or you haven't updated them with the latest laws, they might share information that could get you in trouble. So that is what it's solving, the biggest thing.
So let's share an example. Mm-hmm. Like, what are some things you can't ask when you're trying to check on a reference?
Okay. One of the things we see people ask here in California is how many people lived at the property. That would be discrimination against the size of a family. So you could get in trouble for that. That's one example. We can't ask for, about dogs or animals. There's certain things you can ask, and there's a good example you probably talked about with pet screening episode that definitely went into details on specifically what questions you can ask about that. Yeah. So there's a lot of different things that you can and can't ask. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So so now how does this help them? How do we automate this? How do you make this so that it's something that is more automated? Because it sounds like a very manual process and labor intensive process. Calling, following up, faxing stuff, emailing stuff, and then trying to verify whether any of that stuff is accurate or real. and like in your instance where you ran into that initial problem that kind of sparked this idea, you know, fake landlords and fake information. And so how do you help with all of that? How does this happen?
Yeah, great question. So I'm on a few forums that you guys are on to, Brad Larson's forum, and people are always asking questions there. And one of the things people don't know is there's actually real companies that do fake rental verifications for you. So tenants hire them, and they ask them the right questions, tell them exactly what they need to know. You know, their move-in date, move-out date, everything a property manager would ask them. And basically what they're doing is they're faking a landlord. So that's a big problem.
So there's companies that potential renters will pay to pretend to give them, you know, some rental history.
Exactly.
And they'll just make it up.
Yep. So what they do is, so if you just go on Google and type in fake landlord reference, you'll see a bunch of companies. At least I know 2 of them. I don't know them on top of my head, but they'll be on the top. And basically they'll say, hey, if you want a fake rental verification, contact us. And these people, they know what property managers are asking. And they usually ask like, hey, you know, when did they move in? What did they move out? How much rent did they pay? And if they answer the right questions the right way, then the landlord or property manager says, oh, okay, so they must be the owner because they answer these questions. But this company asks those questions ahead of time, so they're prepared to fake the property manager that they're a landlord for them. And they'll give them all good references and, yeah, paid on time, everything, but they're not even contacting the right person. So
now, I'm guessing that the way they get away with being able to do this is that they're allowing the tenant to provide the info, and they're just trusting the tenant. And then they're saying, well, this is the info that they gave us, so we're absolved.
I'm not sure what the legal side of that and how they work, but, you know, these companies are able to pull, you know, latest sales information and everything. So they can fool pretty much any tenant screening company that calls, or you know, property manager.
So they're pretty sophisticated.
They are, and that they're in business of doing that. So the only way to verify them is to check if you're actually talking to the correct landlord. First, you have to look at the property owner's information. Let's say, you know, 123 Main Street is owned by public records, is owned by Jason Hall. Now you got that. Okay, Jason Hall is the right owner. Now, what is their phone number? And am I even calling the right person? And these companies actually go all the way out. If you get the premium package, they'll actually create a fake property management website with the phone number and everything to make it look like it's real.
Really?
So, yeah. So
that's awful. Wow.
Yeah. So property managers have to rely that, hey, they're not, you know, they're not in business of being investigator to try to figure out if the landlord is true or not. They have to, you know, rely on facts. And the only facts that you can do is you can look up property ownership or ask them to provide some kind of proof of ownership, right? And what we do with our software is whenever somebody requests a reference, we have to, based on the, you know, fair housing compliance, we have to identify that they are, number one, an owner of that property, and that they are that they're owner of the property and they have the right to share that information. So go ahead.
So my question is, when you're going through and doing this process and you're helping to automate this for a property manager, I think when people hear you say that you automate this, that it's all done by a robot, it's all done through an email, and that probably makes them feel even less safe because they're thinking like, well, So how does this actually work? Like, how does your
Okay.
team or your company or your system, how does this happen from the time that they enter it into your system, that they have a new tenant, they're trying to get, verify this tenant's rental history and everything that they've been told. What then happens next in your business? What do you guys do
Okay.
for them?
So the way it works is if somebody wants to start using our system, they basically go and register an account with us. And what we do is we give them a special online form that they can then share on their website. So basically what our customers usually do is they say on their contact us page, they say, hey, are you looking for rental verifications? Click here. So instead of them calling them or faxing them and asking for rental verifications, they have a form that they can go to and fill out a request for rental verification. So let's say they fill out a form and they want a rental verification from property manager. They fill out the form, upload a consent form because that's required, basically. And what happens is a email is sent to the property manager saying so-and-so is requesting a reference. And there's a big button there that says provide a reference. They click on that button and that takes them to a online form, which is HUD approved form. And it basically asks you fact-based questions such as, move in, move out date, how many times they were late, if they had unauthorized animals, pets, and a bunch of other questions that are relevant. And then they hit submit. What that does is it generates a PDF report and a web report that is automatically sent back to the person who requested it. So what that does is it saves about 47% of the time for the property manager to provide rental verifications because it's much faster. There's no faxing or emailing or calling. And the biggest problem that our customers saying is solving is that compliance part. That the questions that are being asked of you are questions that you can provide. That saves up a lot of time. They don't have to keep up with the latest questions that they can fill out.
Yeah, because being asked questions can be dangerous because the natural inclination we have is to just answer them. And most people want to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be really careful because if they're asking the wrong types of questions and you provide answers to those, you then can be legally liable.
Exactly. So if I could go further, the automation part. So that is our beginner plan. And then what we also have done is we've integrated it with Propertyware right now. We're still working on AppFolio, and Buildium is next. But we've successfully integrated it with Propertyware, where a person is we connected to their account. So anytime somebody requests a reference, our system goes into Propertyware, looks up the tenant that they're referring to, looks up all the information that's on the ledger, and generates a report for them. And they have to go in and answer maybe 2 or 3 questions, and 90% of them are filled out for you. Nice. So that saves a lot of time and accuracy because it's not prone to human error, and there's a lot of things that are built in that would basically say, hey, if we can't find that person, then it sends an email saying, hey, that person's not found, and then sends to a manual. So that's the automation part. And we're also looking for people to basically build it out for AppFolio and Buildium. Right now, it's only working with Propertyware. And the other big part is that most people are afraid that, hey, does this integrate with the API of Propertyware? And no, it does not require the API. So basically, you don't have to pay the extra $1 just to have the API.
Got it. So, yeah, and if I could recommend another integration partner, I'd recommend Rent Manager. I'm hearing lots of positive feedback about them, and they have they're one of the first to have an open API. So for connectivity, they play really nice with others. So we gave them an award for that. So so now this then helps the property manager on both sides, dealing with past tenants that they need to do verifications for and potential tenants that they're seeking to make sure the verifications are valid.
Okay, so the one that the automation portion is only for the person who wants to provide rental verifications. The other side is there too. So basically, a property manager can go to our website and they can request a reference using our system. So what the benefit of that is, we screen the landlord for you, so you don't have to be the detective trying to figure out if they're the right person that responded to a rental verification. So so basically, the way it works is you go to our website and you click on request a reference. You put in the email address of the landlord to whom you want to send the request to. Our system sends a email to them and asks them to provide a reference. When they provide a reference, the next step is we identify the landlord, and then we verify that they're actually owner of that property. So there's two ways. Identify that the person is who they say they are, and once we do that, we identify if they actually own that specific property. And then once they do that, only then we send a report back to you saying, hey, yes, here's the report.
Okay, so the bottom line is this is saving them a lot of time in dealing with this stuff, dealing with verifications and all this, and time is money, right?
Exactly.
And so I would imagine your tool, based on the cost of whatever the cost is, they're saving money. And the biggest cost in any business is staff. It's the people. People are the most expensive piece. And so if you can take this lower level task off their plate, and it basically pays for itself, and it's saving you time, and it allows your team to focus on higher level tasks. And it sounds like an all around win-win.
Yeah.
Unless I'm missing anything.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest one, initially we focused on saving time, but the more and more we started, implementing this with property managers, the more they realize the biggest benefit is the compliance part, which is a lot more expensive if it's done wrong. So
yeah, legal liability can get really costly. Yeah. So yeah, and time-wise, incredibly costly. Nobody wants to. Most property managers have been in business for a while, have probably dealt with a lawsuit of some sort, or a nasty eviction process, or something challenging legally. And no, just the chance of mitigating that even slightly is probably a significant amount of peace of mind for a property manager. So
yep. So, and then the other thing is the automation part. So I'm not sure, have you ever read a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
Yeah, Stephen R. Covey.
Yep. And I love the part where he focuses on different quadrants.
Right.
And
the urgent, not urgent, and I can't remember, high priority, low priority, or whatever, something like that.
Yeah. And he says that the biggest problem with most people is they are in urgent and important role all the time, that they never get a chance to get to unurgent but important things. And I feel like that is the biggest problem with property managers, is they're trying to do everything themselves, and they're not being effective. They're getting things done, but they're not effective. So it's very important for everyone, not just property managers, for me, for you, is to sit down and say, okay, I'm getting all these things done, but am I being effective? And the only way you would be effective if you spend time in unurgent but important things. And I feel like that's where people can start focusing on building their business rather than working in their business.
Yeah, another way I like to look at it is whether or not you're reacting. So a lot of times as business owners, we end up in a reactive state in which we're putting out fires constantly. And so the challenge is if you're constantly putting out fires and you're running around, with the fire hose like a fire person putting out fires, it takes a lot more energy and work to put out a fire than it does to prevent a fire. And so if you can set up systems and processes in place in which you can eliminate the urgency and proactively prevent these fires from starting or from reaching that level, because an ounce of prevention, as they say, is worth a pound of cure, then you're going to lower your operational costs. You're going to lower the noise in the business. You're going to increase the level of calm that exists in the company. And I love having a quiet workplace. It's one of the reasons I love working from home, and I have a virtual team. It's quiet. And having a quiet or calm company, I think, is probably a goal of every property manager that's been dealing with so many fires. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that.
So I wanted to go back at the very beginning. You'd mentioned that you'd worked at Apple and some of these other tech companies. And so going from working at companies to being an entrepreneur and starting a business, that's quite a leap. And it's not a leap that a lot of people take. And so what do you think kind of inspired you to leave working for a company to running a company? And I also am curious, what was it like working at Apple? I think, I've got all my Apple products all around me here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got like a plethora of Apple products around me. And we always hear about Apple as this mythical, magical creature that we should all aspire to be like. What was your experience like working there, and how do you feel like that helped you?
Yeah. So I got to be careful because I can't say certain things.
Okay. All right. I get it.
But
You're
my
a
overall
master of compliance.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta be careful. So honestly, I loved working for Apple. It was a great place. There's a lot of smart people there. That is the reason why they're so awesome. I have most of my stuff is Apple, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love, their vision and the fact that they love everything to be so detailed and everything just works well. And it shows in even the things that they do for their employees. It was great. There was a lot of places you can go. They subsidize your food. It was like $2 for a meal. They pretty much took care of you. They wanted you to stay there as much as possible.
Yeah.
The one thing I didn't like is it was almost like, hey, if you're at Apple, you're expected to work. So you're kind of expected to work overtime all the time.
Yeah.
And you had to perform really well. And yeah, so it was a great place for me to not just learn how to get things done, but to get them done from a user's perspective, which is, I think, is a big thing that I learned there. So yeah.
Yeah, they're very, one thing you can tell about all of their products is they're very client-centric in their focus. And I'm a big fan of coaching my own clients to be client-centric in their focus, because really that's why a business exists, is, as I said at the outset of this call, to solve a problem. And if you're not solving a problem for your customer base, then you really don't have a legitimate business model. And so if you can help solve people's problems, not only is it rewarding and feels good, but it also is profitable to be solving real challenges and problems. And so the level of detail that they go to prevent problems and confusion and questions is just really interesting. And I'm a total nerd, so I've been in, I had my MCSE and, did Microsoft stuff in the past, and all these built computers, and I did all this stuff, but the level of detail in which they put into their products, I think, is inspiring, and making sure that the consumer has an easy experience. And I think usability is critical. And so I'm sure that is something that you learned while being there, that you've put into your product to make sure that is intuitive. People have an easy user experience, and it makes sense as they move through the process.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, an example for how we applied in our company, is a lot of times when somebody says, hey, go to our website and do something on it. A lot of websites just say, okay, well, before you do that, you have to register, create username, password. And then they do that, and then they forget where they were, and they get lost.
Yeah.
So what we did is said, okay, well, if we're sending a landlord over to our website, we're going to let them submit a reference before we let them register. So we have that in our system. They don't have to fall into all this register, forgot my password type of deal, where we let them do everything step by step, whereas at the end, they're going to create a password or log in. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So we're working on the user experience, and specifically, we know that property managers and landlords are in a demographic of getting things wrong. They're average 40 to 60 years old, and they're not really techies like we are. So we have to design in such a way where there's simple things that they just cannot get stuck on. And we definitely implemented a lot of that that I learned in Apple. So
yeah, so I think it's great that we're pointing this out, because I think a lot of property managers hear this, they hear all this tech background, and they hear that this is an automation. When just hearing the word automation, some of them are like, oh my gosh, like that sounds so difficult, and I'm not high tech. And so this is something that you guys help them facilitate. I'm sure you have a well thought out onboarding process. This is something that they don't have to be super tech savvy in order to implement in their company. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we've been ironing out a few glitches where people get lost. If they get lost, we try to figure out, okay, what can we do to prevent that from happening? So there is no place where people who are not tech savvy would get stuck on, and we're always looking at those and trying to figure out better ways to do that. So yeah, I mean, the process, there's actually a lot of people you'd be surprised that just cannot fill out the main form, and it's literally few questions and upload a file, and people just get stuck on that. And we have to figure out different ways of presenting it to them that it makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's the sign of a good product or a good company, is there's always this continual improvement process in improving things. And it's something that we do here at DoorGrow. We're just constantly looking at, all right, where are clients getting stuck? What training could we add? What material could we add? What new thing could we do to improve that, so that they can move through it faster or easier and get results quicker? And I think that that's something that every property manager listening can do in their own business. It's something to take a look at. Where are tenants getting confused in your onboarding processes with them? Where are your new owners or new clients getting confused in your process when you onboard them? And just focusing on how can we systemize that? How can we reduce, the drag or the confusion or the constraint, and make this easier for them? And if you build the processes and build things around the consumer to reduce that friction, then it usually translates into lower operational costs and more savings, and usually more money, more productivity, more profit. So
definitely, it's a big thing. So one of the things, going back to Apple, one of the biggest things you learn there is user experience. A lot of companies that don't focus on user experience but focus on just what the developers came up with are usually not profitable, because the user experience almost doubles sales if it's done right. So there's companies that start with user experience and then go into coding. There's all this research that has to be done. So don't rely on what you think or your developer thinks you need to do. Go talk to customers first. Take notes. Where do they get stuck? What don't they like? They'll tell you, but we just don't ask. I think that is the biggest problem. We don't ask them. We think we are the customer, but we're not.
Yeah, there's a great book just called Ask. And a real simple
Ryan
book.
Levesque, right?
Yep, Ryan Levesque. And basically it's all about asking one simple question. Like, what's the biggest challenge you're experiencing with X, whatever X might be. So what's the biggest challenge you're dealing with or biggest problem you're dealing with in your property management business right now? It's a question I love to ask people because that's where their pain is. That's what they're concerned about. And then I want to see, is there something that we can do to help solve that problem for them? Sometimes their biggest challenge is not even something that I can solve for them or do for them, but I know another company that can, and I can point that out to them, or I can say, hey, listen to this podcast episode I did on this subject with this company. They can help you solve this problem, or I've heard good feedback on this business, do this. And or go post this inside our DoorGrow Club Facebook group and ask that question. You'll get tons of people helping you, with that challenge, and everybody does it different, So I think one of the challenges we have, or blind spots we have as entrepreneurs, is we assume that we know things about our customer when we don't, and we need to ask. Mm-hmm. So I had this in my own business recently, in that anytime I've asked people, like, what's your biggest challenge in your business? It's always relevant to something they feel I can help with. And so they're always like, getting leads or growing my business. But we've had enough people in our Facebook group now that I posted a poll to all these business owners, and I asked the business owners, like, what are your biggest challenges? And I built a poll with all the challenges I typically think property managers deal with. And the number one thing was maintenance coordination. That was the number one thing at the top of the list, the biggest challenge they're dealing with. Maintenance can be a huge challenge. The third item was sourcing vendors, basically, which was again connected to maintenance. Mm-hmm. And so maintenance was a big challenge. So some of the maintenance vendors that were able to see that got pretty excited, I'm sure. But that's sometimes we need to make sure that we're asking in the right situation or context in order to get information that's usable instead of information that is just fed. Now, on the list is certainly growing, getting leads, and adding doors. But if that's a problem that my company is helping to solve and their primary concern is something else, then that's something we need to start helping our customers with. And so that was kind of interesting for us to see as a company. And so I think there's some serious value. A lot of times we assume our clients are happy. We assume our clients know. And until they implement something maybe like Gather Kudos, or until they're getting real feedback from their customers, they maybe don't really know how good of a company they are. They really don't know how good the frontline staff are treating people. And so I think that that's a powerful question, is to ask people, what is your biggest challenge with your rental property? What is, if you're dealing with an owner or a tenant, what is the, number one thing that you're looking for in a home or something like this? And so if you can get clarity around these, the main thing that they're focused on, I think the mistake we make a lot of times as business owners, we do these big surveys sometimes. We'll ask too many things because we want to know everything. We want to know all the ideas. And you can kind of get away with that if you're on a phone call with somebody. You can ask them and be really curious. And I've done, probably thousands of phone calls with property management business owners being really curious and asking lots of questions. But if you're doing a survey or doing want to do something effective as a business owner to get real feedback from customers, a one-word question is usually the best way to do it. You can just send out an email to everybody saying, hey, what's the one thing, if we offered it, you would pay us additional money for that we don't do currently for you. Mm-hmm. And, you may get a whole plethora of ideas coming back to you of things that you could do in implementing your business that you're like, oh, that would be pretty easy to add on, or that's totally outside our business model, so we won't do that. But you may get some ideas there. So, so Vitaliy, is there anything else that you feel like people should know about Renter Inc. that we didn't cover? Any major questions or concerns that people bring up when you're on these sales calls with them and telling them about your product?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things is when people say, okay, so you're storing information in your database that you later can be given to other landlords. Is that legal? That is the biggest question that people ask, mm-hmm. and we made sure that is taken care of. We've continually work with attorneys to make sure that all processes and updates that we do are compliant with FCRA, with fair housing, with HUD, to make sure that everything is taken care of, where people and property managers feel safe using our system. So that is the biggest problem. This is the biggest question that people ask. And number two is people ask, okay, well, I trust myself with rental verifications. I don't trust the system to do it better than I can. Okay. To that, we say most of the times our system will be more accurate and more consistent because you build it once and it runs and it's consistent. And we have places built in where if we have a doubt about anything, we can always circulate back to the property manager and say, hey, our system was not able to generate this information and needs your input. So basically, our accuracy is as good or even better than a human because it's programmed and it has a lot of places where there's checks and balances built in to prevent that from happening. And number three is people ask, okay, well, how does it work without the purchasing the API from Propertyware? Because do you use virtual assistants to do it for you, or what do you do? So to that, I would answer that we have I guess a secret sauce that we use that pretty much, it's like a robot that goes through as if it's your personal assistant, and they're actually clicking places, they're gathering information or scraping information and converting it to the correct data and actually calculating it as if a human is doing it. So it doesn't require a API connection because it's using the existing system to do it, as if you hired a virtual assistant to do it for you. So that's how we're able to reduce the cost for property manager to use our system to automate it without the need of Propertyware's API. And the cool part is that AppFolio doesn't give you an open API. Right. And our goal is to use the same technology to integrate those together without the API. And Propertyware has an API, but it's a limited API. Whereas with this, it gives you access to pretty much everything you would have as if you're sitting in front of a computer and doing everything. So that's the benefit there.
Yeah, smart. So now, can property managers use this, though, in the interim that are on AppFolio or they're on Buildium or they're on Rent Manager, and there isn't this scraping tool in place, or there isn't an API connection in place? Can they still use your service?
Yeah, definitely. So they can still sign up, create an account, and then we have a free trial. We have free trials for both of our packages. We also have a free plan, which limits you from ability to basically put a company-specific link on your site, but people can get started with that, and they can start using the system. The automation part that I'm talking about with Propertyware just makes it faster, but they can still use our system to enter in all the information online. They just not save the 90% of their time to do it. But it still gives a benefit because it's compliant and it still saves them 47% of their time. Yeah. So pretty much somebody who doesn't even have a property management system, just has a website, can start using it just by placing a link on their website and saying, hey, all the rental verifications are now down through Renter Inc. And some of our customers even go as far as changing their phone system and saying, hey, are you looking for rental verification? Go on our website, go to contact us, and click on verify rental verification. That saves a lot of time on the phones. So I would recommend them, go on our website, check it out. We have a 60-day trial. It doesn't hurt anyone to get started. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, phenomenal. So yeah, sounds interesting. Sounds exciting. So, well, Vitaliy, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing this with us and telling us a little bit about your business. And how can people reach you? How can they find your website? Why don't you give us all the details?
Sure. So people can find us at Renter Inc. Inc.com, and there's contact information there. I would prefer that people contact us through there. Also, for the DoorGrow, show people we have a little giveaway or freebie. So if somebody signs up with us with a paid account before September 1st, we'll give them a 15% off. So as you sign up, just mention that you heard about us on DoorGrow, and we'll do that for you.
Wow.
But
awesome.
you would have to do that before September 1st.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So I'm sure the listeners will be excited about that. So, all right.
Yeah.
So mention DoorGrow or the DoorGrow Show if you talk with Renter Inc. And your website is renterinc.com, not Renters Inc.
Nope.
Yeah.
Renterinc.com.
And and you can get a 15% discount. So awesome.
Great.
All right. Vitaliy, appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much for coming out, and I'll be excited to hear if some feedback on some clients that start using your services.
Can I ask? Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're looking for people that are using AppFolio and Buildium to start working on integrating the automation part. So if somebody is on AppFolio and they like the idea, somebody is on Buildium, we need to get a few people together so we can work together to automate that part. We have enough people on PropertyWare, but AppFolio and Buildium is something that we're looking forward to. So if somebody wants to try it out, give us, contact us. We'd love to, connect with you. Definitely give you a discount for being the the first people to use it.
All right. So there you go. So yeah, you want to be a beta tester or a guinea pig, you get some discounted rates, and you'll be one of the early adopters, one of the first to have this. And so I think that's kind of exciting for some of our listeners. So appreciate you sharing that. And thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, cool. So that was an interesting interview. If you enjoyed this, then be sure to like, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, if you're in iTunes, be sure to leave us a testimonial or a review. We would really appreciate that, and share your feedback with others. That helps us out. And those of you that are listening, make sure you get inside the DoorGrow Club, our Facebook group. It is a free community full of property management entrepreneurs and business owners, and they are contribution focused. They're making a difference. They're sharing ideas with each other, and it's just awesome to see the momentum that's created. And we get our own momentum by bringing it to others. And so I love seeing the level of contribution in that group. We hit 1,800 business owners, 1,800 members inside that group, and which is ridiculous. There's other groups that are larger, but there's few groups that are as potent and powerful. So I think it's just been a phenomenal resource, and I appreciate everybody in there that might be listening to the show. So thank you to all our listeners and viewers, and be sure to share this with others if this was interesting. So bye, everyone.